Hey everyone, True here, and today we are going to look at the new Dark SSR, Loki. This Mega Poison unit brings a speed of 391 to the battlefield, and at this point I would call that probably average. Let's look at her active skills, and first up we have a Zero Spirit instant skill called Dark Hypnosis. This Mega Poisons a random enemy for 200 time units. Mega Poison, of course, dealing 20 times the damage of normal poison, cannot be overridden by poison or super poison. But that on its own is nothing new. We already saw an instant Mega Poison skill with Angel Reset. However, the notable addition here is the Hypnosis. Now the Hypnosis part is something that will be tied to Awakenings yet again. So we have a 20% to 100% chance of actually hypnotizing the random enemy that also got the Mega Poison. I have to say 20% chance on this kind of skill isn't really great, because Hypnosis is pretty good, but it's not like there's a lot of RNG runs for this to trigger, but only if she uses Dark Hypnosis. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself already going into review territory. What does Hypnosis actually do? The hypnotized enemy will use the next turn to grant the turn to Loki and purify Loki. Now this is really good and cannot be purified. However, there are 4 caveats. One thing is that this enemy, of course, usually will also be mega poisoned, so maybe the enemy will actually die before getting the turn. Then the hypnosis was actually pretty useless. Also, if Loki goes away from the battlefield, the hypnosis is also null and void. Thirdly, it is a random enemy, and maybe that random enemy doesn't get the turn for quite a while, which is important because, as a 4th point, this skill is locked for 100 time units, and it can also not be used if an enemy is already hypnotized. So if the Dark Hypnosis lands on an enemy that has high TU, Loki basically locks herself out of this Dark Hypnosis skill. A last note, Hypnosis will fail against boss units, so this is not a cheat code against X10 boss battles. Moving on to the second skill, which is called Devil's Stance and costs 2 spirit, 130 time units. So that is quite a lot of costs. What can it do? It deals 300% damage to all enemies, and each enemy that is hit has a 50% chance to become Mega Poison for 200 time units. The attack ignores skin passive skills and the counter stance status effect, but for example, it does not ignore stealth. And additionally, it is only usable if there is an enemy guardian on the battlefield. So of course this skill can be quite lethal, but it does take quite a while, and there does need to be an enemy guardian on the battlefield, otherwise she's basically locked out of the skill completely. And I feel like we had less conditions on stronger attack all skills potentially. Then comes her third skill, which is basically her basic skill. If she's locked out of all the other skills, this is the skill that she can always use. It is a nice one because it targets 2 enemies and deals 100% damage, generates 2 spirit and actually deals 400% damage to poisoned targets, and steals 1 spirit from enemies that are poisoned and being hit by this attack. This attack ignores enemy damage reduction effects, skin passive skills, and the counter stance status effect, so all of that quite nice. And it is important to point out that this kind of attack 2 skill makes sense for her because of that kind of random Mega Poison that she sometimes gets off. So it is really good that she can possibly hit beyond guards to actually deal that damage. However, 400% damage to poisoned enemies on its own isn't really all that impressive anymore at this point. But yeah, the spirit steal, of course, quite nice. And up to 4 spirit that is generated from this skill while dealing up to 800% damage is, of course, quite something. And then we get another variation of a strong Survivor's skill, and this time it is called the Survivor's Edict and is locked for 300 time units after she has entered the battlefield. However, this skill actually costs 2 spirit and 100 time units, so compared to other survivor skills, I feel like this is a bit of a step back. However, it does deal 600% damage to one enemy and also mega poisons them for 200 time units. Heals Loki for 100% of max HP. It ignores enemy damage reduction effects and she unlocks the Endure status effect. So it does a lot of good things. However, I still feel like the Survivor's Rush by Dark Gene or the Survivor's Barrage by Kaguya is a better skill in combination with the skill set. Now moving on to the passive side, and one thing that is immediately obvious is that it is kind of unusual that we can see both her two important passives fitting on just one picture, and in this case I think it's not a good sign. Looking at the very first passive, which is called Walchamre, this is basically evasive stance, so it means attacks that would usually target 2 will be completely ignored by her. However, it is even worse somehow than the evasive stance, because after 300 time units, as soon as she has Survivor's Edict unlocked, this evasive stance goes away. So quite honestly, I feel like this might be the worst passive that I have seen the whole year. Her next one is a bit better. It is called Godly Endurance, and basically she enters the battlefield with the Endure status effect. And now comes the nice part. Whenever damage reduces this unit's HP to below 50%, that means specifically not just from attacks but also from poison or burn, and she actually survives it, then she will become fully healed and gain the Endure status effect. The same thing happens whenever she defeats an enemy with an attack, but of course, as always, Endure effects cannot stack. The 50% HP effect will become locked for 100 time units afterwards or until she does defeat an enemy with an attack. So quite a few ways for her to actually heal back, to actually get back the Endure status effect. However, it is just an Endure status effect, so to some things she might actually die quite easily and the effect doesn't trigger. And additionally, what I don't quite like about this is that there is no purification going on here, which is particularly problematic because of that kind of Endure mechanic. She is really susceptible to poison or burn status effects actually killing her off. As far as I can tell, the only purification in her skillset comes from a hypnotized enemy. So all in all, her skillset is quite mixed. I'm not convinced by her so far, to be honest. The hypnosis part is really the greatest part about her, and it is kind of a new introduction of a mechanic, kind of disabling an enemy for one turn and actually making them use it for yourself. However, I already mentioned some of the drawbacks of that kind of dark hypnosis skill as well. She really does need the hypnosis because of her time units that are surprisingly high, and it is really odd to me that she doesn't even get a full evasive stance in her skill set, instead just keeping that for the first 300 time units. Yes, she is a top 3 poison unit, but that isn't particularly impressive. Maybe she's better than Angel Reset, but I certainly don't think she is better than King Arthur. And many skills that we are looking at here, and also her speed, etc., are just things that seem like she is being held back in certain situations. So if you are not fully embracing a kind of poison team build style, then I would actually suggest you to wait or even skip this unit. As always, I will try to get you some top level arena footage of Loki as soon as possible to see how she behaves there and how she performs there. Also, I will be doing an in-depth analysis as per usual with a tier prediction and looking at her AI, which I can already say looks a bit odd to me. So she might also be held back by the AI. But let's see, maybe I am too bearish on this unit and she surprises us. I mean, one thing that can be absolutely said for her is that a lot of the recent releases are kind of weak to poison, specifically Mega Poison, of course. And so maybe she can counter some of these and be relevant just because of that. Thanks to Lens.js and Saturn for the visuals used in this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to become a true carrot. And as always, thanks for watching.